Hey, how's it going, guys? So if you've been following the channel for a minute, you know I'm a very big fan of the Mullet set. What does that mean? Well, it just means I like running a mixed wheel size. In this case, it's the 29 in the front and the 275 in the back. Understand that everything I'm about to say is based on my own opinions, based on my experiences, and what may work for me might not work for you. But I do welcome all your thoughts. Please post something down in the comments so we can have an active discussion and learn from one another, and that would be wonderful. So, why the mullet? Well, I think unless you're 5'10" or taller, or have really long legs, a full 29 might not be for you. I'm 5'8" with a really long wingspan and really short legs even for 5'8", so I like the smaller wheel in the back. Now, the most obvious one that everybody talks about by riding a full 29er is the butt to tire clearance. Yes, there is a tire buzz because of the big wheel every once in a while. That's definitely a thing. But the main reason why I like the smaller wheel in the back is actually because of the BB drop. So, if you were to take a 29 frame and a 27.5 frame, and you want them to have roughly the same BB height, the 29 frame is actually going to have the BB lower relative to that rear axle. You following me? Awesome. Now, with that lower BB drop in relationship to that rear axle, that means that you are actually being put in a position of lower leverage. So it's going to require a bit more of a forceful pull and hip thrust to create lift on that front wheel and rotate around that rear axle. Does that make sense? So that is the basis of almost every bike maneuver out there, right? How to direct your force into that rear axle and rotate around it. Does that mean that a full 29er has no place in the modern world anymore? No. There are always exceptions to the rule, and it always depends on what you're looking for. If you're riding a cross-country bike where all you care about is putting down the watts, roll over, then yeah, 29er is probably what you're looking for, because you're probably not going to be like jibbing around and throwing the bike around anyways, right? So it's all about putting down the watts, and then the bigger the wheel, the better rollover, meaning you can actually pedal through more technical stuff anyways. The bottom bracket sitting lower in relationship to the axles as well means that the rider actually sits more inside the bike, so it's actually going to give you a more stable feeling. What does that mean? Well, it means that you can be a bit more of a passenger and not die, but it's also harder to be the pilot because it's harder to execute maneuvers, right? Smaller wheel in the back is gonna bring that rear axle down, meaning the BB drop is not as high, so that it's easier to create lift. All right, now let's talk about the mullet, right? The bigger wheel in the front. When you mullet a bike, the front axle is higher than the rear axle, meaning you're actually going to be at a better position leverage wise to create lift than you would even if you were riding 27.5 front and back. So it makes it even easier to rotate around that rear axle, and it just takes less of a force. Everyone who's tried to wheelie my bike goes, whoa, it's really easy to bring up, and then it keeps going because, yeah, it just takes a while to figure out that balance point. But yeah, I like it. So that's the main reason why I like the mullet. It's the bottom bracket to that rear axle, and the tire to butt clearance thing is that's just a plus. Now, what other benefits are there to the mullet? Well, a smaller wheel in the back is actually going to make your climbing gear ratios much easier. So if you're running like a 46, like old school Shimano 46 or like a 50, the ratio is actually going to make it climb a lot easier, at least on the smooth fire road steep stuff, because it is technically a lower gear ratio when you think about the ratios between your chainring to the rear cog and the cassette to the size of your wheel. So there is that. What also happens when you mullet a bike like this is you actually, because you're changing the angle of your bike, your rear wheel axle path is actually a little bit more rearward. It's just something to note. Differences are probably so minimal you're not even going to feel it, but that does happen. Smaller gyro in the back also means you are less affected by braking forces like brake jack and stuff. So just more pros for the smaller wheel in the back. Does it make the bike feel a little less stable in the chunky rough stuff? Sure. A smaller gyro also makes it, like, you know, get bucked around a little bit. Yeah, but I think it's way better to be able to pilot the bike than be a passenger and not die. But that's me. So how do you go about mulleting a bike? Sure, there are, you know, mullet specific frames now, but for most of us, we are still going around taking either a 27.5 frame or a 29 frame and doing it that way. Now, if you are using a 27.5 frame, what you're going to want to look for is a frame that is, well, going to be a little bit overforked in relationship to the rear. What I mean by that is look for a frame with maybe, I don't know, 160 mil travel in the front with 130, 140 mil in the back, and then slap a 29 fork of shorter travel. Now, the reason for that is because you need to account for the additional 20 mil of axle to crown of the 29 fork of the same travel, and also the 18 mil of extra radius in the 29 wheel. As for using a 29 frame, you're going to want to use something with a really long wheelbase, because with a really long wheelbase, when you slap in a smaller wheel in the back, the geometry is not affected as much. So these are just things to keep in mind. Now, how you set these up are also going to change. When you do something like this, in general, the reach is going to get shortened, the stack is going to go up, the bottom bracket is going to drop if you do the 29 route. If you do the 27.5 route, the bottom bracket goes up. Chainstay lengths don't really change as much because the rear and the bottom bracket is kind of close. You can slap in reverse offset bushings for the 29 frame, or you can set offset bushings for a 27.5 frame to bring the bottom bracket down. You're definitely going to want to run a longer stem and a lower stack height to accommodate the shorter reach. But yeah, what I did with mine on this guy is that's a 27.5 frame. That's a Norco Storm, which I just like played with, and I'm actually using the axle to crown the rigid fork, and that's way shorter than the 100 mil 27.5 fork it came with, and there's math with that too, but you guys probably aren't interested in this one. You guys are more interested in this one, which is my 29 Norco sight that I just slapped a 27.5 wheel in the back. Now, what happened with my bike is it got to a little under 63.5 degree head angle. The bottom bracket's about 338 now, and the reach is about 438 or so. So that's what happened to my bike and how I have this set up. So I'm still running the same width of bars, which I normally do, which is 760, but I am running a 50 mil stem with a -10 rise on that to help with the increased stack. So yeah, guys, those are just my thoughts on why I like the mullet, and I think it's gonna work very well for most short people. Understand once again that what works for me might not work for you, but you know what? Please click here to subscribe, click here for something else, click here for something else. I will see you all soon. Bye.